Hi guys, it's Spencer. Welcome to Sphynx Reads. Today I'll be doing an 8-book wrap-up as well as a TBR. So the books that I'll be talking about today are books that I've read recently that I have not talked about or have not talked about as much as I'd like to on the channel yet, so that you can kind of get a glimpse into what I've been reading that I have not talked about yet outside of tags and things like that. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Odd and the Frost Giants by Neil Gaiman. So I read this pretty early on in the year. I listened to this on audiobook and I rated it 3.5 stars. So as with any Neil Gaiman book, his writing style is just really nice. It's really immersive and atmospheric. I think I say that about a lot of books because I don't have the vocabulary other than those two words. Really, that is Neil Gaiman's trademark. I think his writing is just really whimsical, and this story really is. It revolves around Norse mythology, so expect some Norse gods here and there. We follow our main character, Odd, who is accompanied by a bunch of different animals in this adventure, and just reads a lot like a fairy tale. So if you're interested in fairy tales, this might be the book for you. However, it did not really work for me because I just thought it was a little bit underwhelming. Our main character is a little bit endearing, but other than that, this story was just kind of bland for me. Like, there's not a lot of heart to it. The second book I'm going to talk about is also by Neil Gaiman, and that is Fortunately the Milk. I also listened to this on audiobook. It's also fairly short. I rated this 4 stars. I liked it a lot more than Odd and the Frost Giants. It's just really weird and really whimsical. It's also very funny. I mean, for a middle grade level, it's a very funny story. I'd say if you're a fan of Alice in Wonderland or James and the Giant Peach, I think you'll like this book. This story is narrated by a father who explains to his kids why he came home late from just buying a bottle of milk outside. The next book I'm going to talk about is Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien. Yes, it is J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. But I rated it 2 stars. I just thought it was really uninteresting. It was really dull. Some of the letters were funny, but others were just like, this is so boring. I mean, these letters weren't really meant for a public audience. This was actually J.R.R. Tolkien giving his children letters from Father Christmas as sort of a Christmas gift to them. So if there were like inside jokes or things of that nature, I didn't really catch those. But I think it's really cute that Tolkien did this for his kids, so I thought that was adorable. The next book I'm going to talk about is actually kind of a collection of 3 books. You can either buy the book separately or in this one volume, and that is 3 Tales of My Father's Dragon. I had read just the first volume, My Father's Dragon, when I was a kid. It's a very short middle grade chapter book. I really loved it as a kid, and I decided this year that I would read the rest of the series, which is just 2 other chapter books that are very short. Overall, I rated this 4 stars. It's just a very nostalgic series for me. It's just about a kid who rescues a cat, and the cat asks him to help the cat rescue a dragon in a far-off island. And because the kid has kind of problems with his parents, he decides to run away and help out the cat rescue this dragon. This is just a very sweet and simple, lighthearted story that I think a lot of kids will love. I think this is the kind of story that you would read to your kid if you want to get them started into reading. I think this is a very good introduction to reading. It was for me. The next book I'm going to talk about is Know My Name by Chanel Miller. I talked about this book briefly in a previous video. I rated it 5 stars. This is a memoir. It's non-fiction. And this is the story of Chanel Miller, who was previously known as Emily Doe. That was kind of her alias when she was going through the case surrounding her sexual assault. This is such an important book. This is probably my most important read of 2021. Chanel Miller writes so beautifully that, I talked about this before, but she managed to make me angry at all the right parts as well as feel empowered at the same time. The whole book is just really thought-provoking. My eyes were open to a lot of different issues with regards to sexual assault and rape and how we treat victims and survivors and the perpetrators. I need everybody to read this book because it's so important and it's so necessary to continue the conversation surrounding this very delicate, very sensitive issue. So I highly recommend this, but definitely proceed with caution if that's something you're kind of sensitive about. The next book I'm going to talk about is Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig. I rated this 4.5 stars. I love this book so much. I think I love this book not necessarily because of the message or the writing. I think it just came to me, or I thought of reading it at the perfect time. I was actually recently diagnosed with anxiety and depression, so reading this was before that actually, and kind of reading Matt Haig's story kind of helped me identify some of the things that he went through in myself. I think a lot of people don't necessarily like this book because it's just really straightforward. It just lists out all of Matt Haig's experiences with depression. And there's nothing really new or groundbreaking in terms of bringing new material or new information in terms of what we already know about mental health. But I really value this book as a pick-me-up, at least for me, because I just took so much away from it, and it's definitely helped me a lot with my mental and emotional health. The next book I'm going to talk about is Dune by Frank Herbert. So I've read this in preparation for the movie that's coming out, or has already come out by the time that you're seeing this. And I just wanted to read it for the sake of being able to say, I read Dune, like I read this monster of a book that's like a sci-fi classic, like the equivalent of what Lord of the Rings was to fantasy. Like Dune, I've achieved it. I read Dune. I actually went into this expecting it to be kind of 2 stars or something that I would just not like, because I've heard that the writing is really difficult and the world building is not the best. I actually enjoyed this quite a bit, even though I'm not a huge sci-fi reader. The writing definitely wasn't to my taste. It's written in third person omniscient, which kind of allowed me to see everyone's perspectives and thoughts all at the same time, and that was just confusing and I did not like it. I do think a lot of things could have been cut out, but I'm not a huge sci-fi reader, so I don't necessarily have authority to speak on that. Same goes with the world building. I thought it wasn't the best. There were just like a lot of cultures, religions, and different terms that were just thrown at you and were not really explained unless you read the appendix, and I really don't like doing that. Honestly, I think 80% of the time I had no idea what was going on. It was just like really weird, but also it was really interesting. Like I was like, wow, this culture is really interesting. I wonder why they do that. Like, wow, this character acts this way, and I just want to know more about their motivations and what their goal is. There were actually a few scenes, even though I had no idea what was going on, that were particularly moving. And I also loved learning more about the Freemen, which is kind of the... Well, I guess I can't talk about it because that would be spoilers. But yeah, the culture of the Freemen is something that really intrigued me. And then the last book that I want to talk about today is A Star Named Vega by Benjamin J. Roberts. The author himself actually reached out to me and wanted me to review his self-published book and gave me a review copy in exchange for an honest review. And I love this book so much. I rated it 4.5 stars, which I did not expect. I've just had a lot of negative experiences with like review copies and self-published books that I'm just like really scared. Like I want to give everyone a chance, of course, but I was just like, I don't know, but okay, let's do it, because I read a sample of his book when he requested me to review it, and I was like, okay, I think I can handle this, and it's not super long. And so I read it, and oh my gosh, it was amazing. I had so much fun. So I don't really want to talk too much about the plot of this book, but just imagine this. It's sci-fi, it's kind of younger YA, older middle grade book, has really interesting and quirky technology. I loved the robots in this story. Our main character is a graffiti artist, and she befriends this really computer hacker person, IT type guy. Wow, I'm an IT person. I don't even know how to describe what that character does. But he's a hacker geek, and he's my favorite character. And they sort of team up in defense of a race that is very misjudged in this kind of interplanetary system. I would describe this book as a mix of Brandon Sanderson's Skyward and Tahara Mafi's Furthermore, in that it's sci-fi, has great characters, and it's also very colorful. Like, again, I love the technology in this world so much, and I also love our main character and her best friend. It also touches on a lot of different social themes and does so very delicately. It's also just a really lighthearted read, but also there are some really emotional moments and high stakes. I just love this book so much, and I'm glad that I wasn't disappointed. The writing style is excellent. I had no issues with it whatsoever. That's usually kind of my main thing or main problem with a lot of review copies that I've been sent. Like, usually the concept is good. Like, obviously authors write their books because they know that their idea is like amazing and they want to put it down on paper. But sometimes the writing is just not the best, or at least not to my taste. So I was glad that this one had an amazing story, amazing characters, and also had an amazing writing style. So that is it for my 8-book wrap-up. So now to the next part, which is my TBR. So recently I've been kind of reevaluating how I've been using my channel and how I perceive reading because of content creation, and I realized that since I started Booktube, my desire to read or my enjoyment in reading has kind of diminished because now I'm mostly reading just to hit a goal or to have content to churn out. So I've decided to change that a bit and give myself more freedom to read kind of whatever I want. And so the way that I'm doing that is I'm gonna do a 5-book TBR. And whenever I finish those 5 books, I'll have a 5-book wrap-up with the theme that I'll kind of pull out from this jar. And I don't have to follow it strictly. It's just kind of a guide for me to know what to read next. And it's also not time-bound, so I can just kind of read it at my own pace. So I guess this is also me saying that I'm not sure how consistently I'll be churning out new content, but every time I complete 5 books, I'll have a wrap-up for you guys. Okay, so I guess I'll pull out the prompt for my next 5-book TBR. I'll tell you also the books that I'll be reading for that. So let's go. Okay, let's go and pick what I'll be reading. I got a green one, and this, oh my gosh, I hope this is an easy one. So let's see. This one. I'm so happy! I don't know if you can read my handwriting, but it says middle grade. I love middle grade, so I guess I'm doing that. Okay, let me pick up my TBR and I'll come back to you. Okay, so here are the books that I'm going to be picking out for this next wrap-up that I'll be filming once I read all of these books. So book number 1, I'm going to read A Tale of Sorcery, which is the 3rd book in A Tale of Magic series by Chris Colfer. I've already read the first 2. I love the first one. I did not like the second book, so I guess this next book will kind of decide whether or not I continue on with the series. And then second, I want to read Gravity Falls, Journal 3. This isn't really a middle grade book. This is kind of a book that's connected to the Gravity Falls TV show. If you guys are familiar with it, it's an awesome TV show. Everyone should watch it. I'm going to be reading that. Number 3, I want to read Amari and the Night Brothers. This is a well-beloved book. It's been released, I think, just last year. It was written by B.B. Alston, and I'm super excited to get into this because it's been compared to Harry Potter and Nevermore and kind of just like in that same vein, and I've heard nothing but good things about this book. Number 4, I want to read A Darkness of Dragons by S.A. Patrick. So apparently this is the first book in the Songs of Magic series. I actually don't know too much about this book. I just know that I had added this to my TBR after watching one of Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin, one of his videos on like middle grade recommendations. So I'm really excited to get into this because I trust Gavin's opinions. Number 5, I want to read Some Kind of Happiness by Claire Legrand. And I think I also got this recommendation from another booktuber whose name I can't remember. As far as I know, I think this was in her category of books that are like really important and really thought-provoking. So yeah, that'll be my 5-book TBR. So again, A Tale of Sorcery, Gravity Falls, Amari and the Night Brothers, A Darkness of Dragons, and Some Kind of Happiness. I'm excited to read all of these books and I'm excited to talk about them with y'all. So that will be it for this kind of long-winded video already. I hope you guys liked it and enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys are currently reading or have recently read down in the comments. I would love to keep chatting with you. If you guys like this video, please give it a thumbs up and please forget to subscribe so that you can do it later, and have a good day.